beasts are a threat to all of our lands.
It's time, Hiccup.
Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
The cinematic world of fantasy has always held a special place in the hearts of audiences, and few stories have captured that magic as beautifully as How to Train Your Dragon. The 2025 live-action remake marks not just a nostalgic revival, but a rebirth, the beginning of a new era for both dragons and dreamers. In this grand return, dragons are not merely mythical creatures. They are symbols of courage, compassion, and coexistence. The movie reintroduces us to the timeless relationship between Hiccup and Toothless, reminding fans why this saga became one of the most beloved tales in modern cinema. This isn't just a retelling. It's a reawakening of a story that continues to evolve with its audience, blending emotional depth, visual mastery, and storytelling brilliance into a spectacle that defines what cinematic wonder truly means. From its very first moments, How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, envelops the audience in an atmosphere of mystery and majesty. The opening sequence unfolds across the windswept cliffs of Berk, now realized in breathtaking live-action detail. The island feels alive. Waves crash against jagged rocks, clouds drift lazily above the Viking village, and the sound of dragon wings echoes in the distance. The audience can almost feel the salty air and the trembling ground as something massive stirs in the sky. This immersive world-building instantly signals that the story is stepping into a grander, more realistic dimension than ever before. The once animated fantasy realm has transformed into a living, breathing world that honors its animated origins while achieving a scale only possible through modern visual craftsmanship. The Return of Dragons isn't just a narrative event. It's a metaphor for renewal. In the original trilogy, dragons represented freedom and understanding in a divided world. Now, in this new era, they symbolize the return of belief in imagination, unity, and humanity's bond with nature. As the story begins, we learn that dragons have long vanished from the skies, retreating into legend. The people of Berk have changed. They've grown distant from the old ways, building their society without the creatures that once defined their destiny. Yet, beneath the calm surface lies a quiet yearning, a spiritual emptiness that whispers of something missing. This void sets the tone for the film's emotional journey. A world that has forgotten wonder must once again learn to believe. The return begins subtly. Rumors spread of shadows gliding across the moon, of roaring sounds echoing through the fjords. Children whisper stories their grandparents once told, about dragons soaring through the aurora-lit night, about Toothless, the mythical night fury who disappeared into the clouds. When Hiccup, now older and wiser, stands at the edge of a cliff gazing into the horizon, the camera captures a profound silence before the storm. He has become a leader burdened by peace, a man who carries the weight of memories and the guilt of choices made long ago. His world is safe, yet something vital has been lost. That haunting emptiness becomes the spark for the story's rebirth. As the narrative unfolds, the movie beautifully parallels the journey of humanity and dragonkind. The filmmakers craft this new era not as a repetition, but as an evolution. We see a generation born after the age of dragons, curious yet skeptical. Their elders tell tales of fire-breathing creatures and friendships that defied fear, but to them, it's mythology. This generational contrast becomes a central theme, how legends fade and how belief can rekindle them. Hiccup's son, a spirited young boy mirroring his father's early curiosity, becomes the emotional bridge between the forgotten past and the rediscovered future. Through his eyes, we witness the wonder of seeing dragons for the first time, a moment that reignites humanity's connection to the extraordinary. Cinematically, the film's tone reflects this awakening. DeBlois, the visionary director behind both the animated trilogy and this live-action adaptation, uses light, texture, and sound to capture the essence of rebirth. Golden sunlight breaks through storm clouds as dragons reappear, symbolizing hope piercing through disbelief. The orchestral score swells with echoes of John Powell's iconic themes, reimagined with grander instrumentation and haunting new melodies. Every note carries emotional resonance, a musical language of rediscovery. As the first dragon descends upon Berk, the sound design envelops viewers, the rush of wings, the distant thunder of flight, the deep hum of the earth responding to their return. It's cinematic poetry, the kind that reminds audiences why they fell in love with movies in the first place. But beyond spectacle, the Return of Dragons chapter emphasizes humanity's emotional evolution. Hiccup's people have thrived materially but grown spiritually hollow. The film questions whether progress without wonder is truly progress. It challenges viewers to reflect on their own world, how technology, fear, and routine can dull our sense of awe. The dragon's return becomes a mirror for our collective rediscovery of empathy and imagination. Through Hiccup's perspective, we see that the dragons never truly left. They lived on in stories, in dreams, and in the quiet corners of the human heart. The real return, therefore, is not of the dragons themselves, but of belief, a belief rekindled when humanity rediscovers humility. This emotional layering gives the film its powerful resonance with both old fans and new audiences. The original How to Train Your Dragon trilogy taught lessons about friendship and acceptance. The 2025 version deepens those lessons into themes of legacy and renewal. It's about generations healing through memory and the courage to protect what once was lost. Hiccup's internal journey mirrors humanity's external one. He must confront his own doubts, relearn the language of trust, and open his heart once more to the creatures he once called family. In doing so, he reminds the world that courage is not just about fighting monsters, but about believing in what others say is impossible. Visually, the dragon's return sequence stands as one of the most breathtaking cinematic achievements in recent years. Massive clouds roll across the horizon as hundreds of dragons burst forth from hiding, each scale shimmering under sunlight like living jewels. The cinematography contrasts the vastness of their freedom with the smallness of human figures standing below, a reminder of nature's grandness and humanity's humility. Toothless, the Night Fury, reappears not as a fantasy but as a symbol, a living embodiment of love, loyalty, and the bond that defied extinction. His reunion with Hiccup is wordless yet profoundly emotional. Two old souls finding each other across time and distance. The movie's pacing ensures that every frame carries emotional weight. There are no rushed reveals or forced nostalgia. Instead, it unfolds organically, giving the audience time to feel the gravity of each moment. The return of dragons isn't treated as spectacle alone, but as a sacred event, an awakening. Villagers tremble, children cheer, and even the skeptics fall silent in awe. The blend of wonder and fear that once defined humanity's first encounter with dragons resurfaces, but this time, it's accompanied by wisdom. People now understand that fear and awe can coexist, and true courage lies in embracing both. Thematically, The Return of Dragons also speaks to environmental consciousness, a reflection of our real-world need to reconnect with nature. The dragons symbolize balance, the harmony between human ambition and the world's ancient forces. Their disappearance mirrored humanity's disconnection from the natural order, and their return represents reconciliation. This message resonates deeply with today's global audience, where ecological awareness is not just important, but essential. The film's dialogue subtly weaves this idea without becoming preachy. Instead, it lets imagery and emotion carry the message. One of the film's most beautiful sequences involves a young child standing on a cliff at sunset, reaching out as a small dragon circles above. The camera pans slowly, showing the vastness of the sea and sky, underscoring the infinite possibilities that belief can create. It's a moment of pure cinema, wordless, timeless, and unforgettable. That single gesture captures the essence of the entire movie. Connection. A human hand extended toward the unknown, a symbol of faith that bridges worlds. As the film moves toward its climax, The Return of Dragons becomes a turning point not just for Berk, but for the human spirit itself. The dragons bring with them lessons of unity and humility that rekindle hope across the land. Hiccup's leadership evolves from warrior to guardian, his wisdom guiding his people toward a new coexistence. The final scenes of this chapter echo the opening. The same cliffs, the same horizon, but now filled with dragons soaring freely. The era of separation ends, and a new dawn begins. Ultimately, The Return of Dragons stands as a powerful beginning for the 2025 adaptation. It's a chapter that bridges past and present, fantasy and reality, childhood wonder and adult understanding. It reminds viewers that legends never truly die. They sleep, waiting for the moment when humanity dares to dream again. The dragon's return is the triumph of belief over doubt, of imagination over apathy, and of love over fear. In a world where the extraordinary often fades beneath routine, this story reignites the flame of wonder that lives within every heart. And as the credits roll, audiences are left not only mesmerized by what they saw, but inspired by what they felt. The unshakable truth that even in the darkest times, dragons will always return to those who believe. The heart of How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, beats within the bond between two souls, one human, one dragon, whose friendship defied centuries of fear and misunderstanding. When audiences first met Hiccup Horrendous Haddock III and his Night Fury companion, Toothless, more than a decade ago, they witnessed a connection that transcended species, cultures, and even worlds. The 2025 live-action remake resurrects that bond with a depth and realism that resonates far beyond nostalgia. It is not merely a reunion. It's a rediscovery. The chemistry between Hiccup and Toothless has matured, layered with memory, loss, and love, an emotional evolution that elevates the entire narrative. The film reintroduces Hiccup as a young man on the cusp of adulthood in the original animated saga. But in this version, we find him older, wiser, and more reflective. He carries the quiet strength of a leader who has seen both beauty and destruction in equal measure. Hiccup's character has always stood apart from the stereotypical Viking hero. Where others wielded axes and sought glory in battle, he sought understanding and peace. That defining difference, his empathy, remains his greatest weapon even now. DeBlois ensures that this human side of Hiccup takes center stage. Through expressive performances and subtle gestures, we see a man haunted by the memory of his dragon, living in a world that has forgotten the harmony they once shared. The audience first sees Hiccup standing on a high cliff overlooking the sea. a haunting reflection of his past self. The wind tugs at his cloak as he gazes into the endless blue, his eyes scanning the sky not for enemies, but for an old friend. It's a moment of silence filled with echoes, the flapping of invisible wings, the faint roar of a dragon long gone. Hiccup's face holds both hope and heartbreak, and that single expression speaks volumes. He has waited years for a miracle he isn't sure will come. This opening reintroduction grounds him not as a mythic hero, but as a human being defined by love and longing. The screenplay then gently transitions into Hiccup's daily life on Berk, now a peaceful, thriving island that has evolved in the absence of dragons. The village, once rough and primitive, has become more civilized, its people adapting to a new age. Yet amidst the progress, a quiet emptiness lingers. The forges burn, ships sail, and children laugh, but the skies are silent. The people of Berk no longer look upward, and it's that subtle change that underscores Hiccup's melancholy. He moves through his village like a man out of time, respected by all but understood by few. He still carries Toothless's old saddle, still visits the cliffs where they once took flight, and still speaks of dragons as though they might return any day. Some see it as foolishness, others as faith. Then, in a scene charged with emotion, we see the first sign that Hiccup's faith was not misplaced. Deep in the forest beyond Berk, strange tracks appear in the mud, claw marks that no animal could have made. Hiccup's heart races as he kneels, brushing his fingers against the earth. The camera lingers on his expression, disbelief mixed with awe, as memories flood back. He knows what he's seeing. It can't be, and yet it is. Somewhere, somehow, a dragon has returned. That night, Hiccup follows the tracks to a secluded valley bathed in moonlight. The air hums with tension and anticipation. Leaves rustle, shadows move, and then, from the darkness, a familiar shape emerges, sleek, black, and radiant under the silver glow. Toothless, the Night Fury, the same dragon who once changed Hiccup's life, standing before him again after years of separation. The reunion is staged with breathtaking restraint. There are no words, no shouts of joy, just two old friends frozen in disbelief, staring into each other's eyes. The soundtrack falls silent, replaced by the sound of slow, steady breathing. The camera captures the flicker of recognition in Toothless's glowing green eyes, mirrored by the tears glistening in Hiccup's. When Toothless steps forward, every movement carries emotional gravity. His wings twitch nervously, his head tilts in curiosity, and a low, familiar purr rumbles in his throat, a sound that fans will instantly recognize. Hiccup takes a trembling step closer, his hand outstretched, and time seems to stand still. It's a recreation of their very first encounter, a visual echo of the original film's most iconic scene. But this time, it carries the weight of history. A bond broken by necessity, now healed by destiny. When their hands and snout finally meet, it's more than a reunion. It's an awakening. This scene defines the soul of the movie. It's not about spectacle, but emotion, the pure, wordless language of friendship. Toothless nuzzles Hiccup's palm, then lowers his head in the same affectionate gesture he once gave as a young dragon. Hiccup laughs softly through his tears, whispering, "I knew you'd find your way back." The dialogue is minimal, yet every line carries decades of emotion. The camera pans wide, showing them silhouetted against the moonlit valley, a man and his dragon, together again. The audience, too, feels that cathartic release, as if something missing from their hearts has returned. As the story continues, we learn that Toothless has not come alone. He is now a leader of dragons, a protector of the hidden world where his kind has lived in peace. The filmmakers skillfully balance Toothless's majestic power with his playful spirit. His movements are smoother, wiser. He is no longer the impulsive young dragon we once knew, but a seasoned guardian who carries the legacy of his species. Yet, in Hiccup's presence, flashes of his old personality shine through. The head tilts, the goofy grins, the mischievous spark. These moments of levity remind viewers that their bond is eternal, unbroken by time, distance, or evolution. The chemistry between Hiccup and Toothless has always been a marvel of storytelling, a dialogue without words. The live-action adaptation deepens this connection through nuanced performances and advanced CGI that captures the subtleties of expression. Toothless's eyes convey emotion with uncanny realism, curiosity, sadness, joy, while Hiccup's reactions mirror those emotions perfectly. Their relationship is no longer about learning to trust. It's about remembering how to trust again. Through their reunion, the film explores themes of forgiveness, loyalty, and the unspoken understanding that true friendship never fades. Hiccup's return to flight is another pivotal moment that encapsulates the magic of their bond. In one breathtaking sequence, Toothless kneels to let Hiccup climb onto his back once more. The familiar saddle clicks into place, and for a moment both hesitate, as if testing the weight of time itself. Then, with a powerful leap, they take to the skies. The sensation is visceral, the roar of wind, the rush of clouds, the thrill of freedom. The camera soars alongside them, capturing wide aerial shots of Berk from above, bathed in sunlight and mist. It's as though the island itself rejoices at their reunion. The music swells with an orchestral reprise of the classic Test Drive theme, a nod to fans who grew up with the original trilogy. As they fly, memories flash across the screen. Brief glimpses of their adventures, victories, and sacrifices. The visual storytelling bridges past and present seamlessly, creating a sense of continuity that feels both nostalgic and new. Toothless dives and spins with the same youthful energy he once had, and Hiccup laughs like the boy he used to be. It's more than flight. It's freedom rediscovered, trust rekindled, and friendship reaffirmed. Yet, beneath the joy lies a deeper layer of realism. The film acknowledges that time has changed them both. Hiccup's hair is streaked with gray, his movements slower, his gaze wiser. Toothless, too, bears scars, literal and metaphorical, from years of leadership and solitude. They are survivors in a world that moved on without them. Yet their reunion proves that love endures even as everything else fades. Their flight is both celebration and farewell, a reminder that nothing lasts forever, but what's real never truly disappears. The relationship between Hiccup and Toothless also serves as a powerful metaphor for humanity's connection with nature. Toothless represents the wild, beautiful, unpredictable, and essential. Hiccup represents humanity, intelligent, emotional, and often conflicted. Their friendship embodies the balance between the two, showing that harmony comes not from dominance, but from understanding. In a world increasingly disconnected from nature, this message feels more relevant than ever. The film doesn't preach, it simply shows us the truth through emotion and imagery. One of the most poignant sequences comes later in the film when Hiccup introduces his son to Toothless. The boy, wide-eyed and trembling with excitement, takes hesitant steps forward just as his father once did. Hiccup watches with tears in his eyes as Toothless lowers his head, allowing the child to touch him. The generational symmetry is beautiful. The legacy of friendship passed down through touch, trust, and wonder. It's in this moment that the audience realizes How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, isn't just about reunion. It's about continuity. The story of Hiccup and Toothless is timeless because it's a story of connection that every generation needs to hear. As the film nears its emotional crescendo, the bond between Hiccup and Toothless becomes the guiding light of the entire narrative. Through their reunion, peace returns to both worlds, human and dragon alike. Their friendship becomes the bridge that unites them once again, proving that understanding and compassion are the most powerful forces in existence. When DreamWorks first announced that How to Train Your Dragon would return in 2025 as a live-action adaptation, fans around the world responded with a mix of excitement, disbelief, and curiosity. The original animated trilogy was widely considered one of the most emotionally powerful and visually stunning animated sagas ever made, a cinematic masterpiece that balanced heart, humor, and heroism. To attempt a live-action transformation was both ambitious and risky. The question was simple yet monumental. Could the magic of animation, with its limitless imagination, be successfully reborn in the tangible world of live action? The answer, as How to Train Your Dragon 2025 proves, is a resounding yes. Not through imitation, but through innovation. This transformation marks a historic moment in modern filmmaking. The 2025 adaptation doesn't merely translate the animated world into a real one, it reinterprets it. Director Dean DeBlois, who also helmed the original trilogy, approached this challenge not as a remake, but as a resurrection, a chance to re-envision Berk, its people, and its dragons with the full emotional and visual scope of live-action storytelling. In interviews, DeBlois explained that he wanted to create a version of How to Train Your Dragon that feels real enough to touch. And indeed, that's exactly what this film achieves. Every detail, from the texture of Toothless's scales to the wind whipping through Hiccup's hair mid-flight, feels breathtakingly authentic. To understand the magnitude of this transformation, one must first appreciate what made the animated films so special. The trilogy, beginning in 2010, created a universe of emotional resonance, colorful yet mature, whimsical yet deeply human. The animated medium allowed for poetic exaggeration. The dragons were expressive, their eyes brimming with emotion. The skies of Berk glowed with aurora-like color palettes that reflected the characters' inner worlds. Translating that visual language into live action meant grounding fantasy, without losing wonder, a balancing act few. Filmmakers have successfully achieved. DeBlois and his creative team approached this with reverence. They began by reimagining the geography of Berk not as a cartoonish island, but as a living, breathing ecosystem. Filmed across Iceland, Norway, and Scotland, the landscapes evoke an ancient beauty. Towering cliffs, black sand beaches, and glacial mountains. Every frame feels sculpted by nature itself. The use of practical locations, combined with cutting-edge CGI, blurs the boundary between real and imagined. Audiences can almost feel the chill of the northern winds and the warmth of dragon fire reflecting off stone walls. But the most extraordinary aspect of this transformation is how dragons themselves are brought to life. In animation, dragons could move, emote, and express themselves with exaggerated charm. Live action demanded something else, realism without sacrificing personality. The visual effects team, led by Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, spent years developing a new rendering system that allowed dragon skin, muscle, and movement to react naturally to light and air. Toothless, in particular, became a triumph of digital artistry. His scales gleam with iridescent tones that shift in the sunlight. His wings ripple with tension as he flies, and his eyes, wide, curious, intelligent, remain the emotional center of every scene he's in. The filmmakers resisted the temptation to make the dragons too realistic or monstrous. Instead, they retained their emotional readability, a subtle homage to the expressive animation of the original films. The result is a perfect synthesis. Creatures that feel both mythic and believable, awe-inspiring yet tender. When Toothless cocks his head or lets out a soft purr, the audience doesn't see a computer-generated creation. They see a living being, full of heart and thought. That emotional authenticity is the key to why this transformation succeeds where so many others have failed. Equally remarkable is how the human world of Berk evolved in the transition. The animated trilogy's Vikings were stylized and humorous, their designs larger than life. In live action, the tone is more grounded but no less vibrant. The costume and production design teams spent months studying Nordic and Celtic history to create attire and architecture that felt historically inspired yet fantastical. Leather tunics, metal clasps, and fur-lined capes look weathered and handmade, conveying the rough realism of a people living in harmony with nature. Yet the color palette remains distinctively Berk. Deep sea blues, earthy browns, and muted golds that mirror the landscape and dragon fire. The transformation also extends to the storytelling tone. While the animated films balanced humor and heart, the live-action version leans slightly more into emotional realism. Characters feel more layered, their pain and joy more tangible. Hiccup's scars, both literal and emotional, are visible. His father's legacy weighs heavily upon him. Toothless's behavior carries the wisdom of a creature who has experienced loss and exile. Yet, despite the darker tone, the movie never loses its sense of wonder. When Hiccup and Toothless take flight for the first time, the audience feels that same rush of exhilaration that defined the original test drive sequence. Only now, it's enhanced by the visceral presence of live-action physics, wind, and gravity. One of the greatest triumphs of this transformation lies in performance direction. Casting Hiccup and Astrid in live action was perhaps the film's most daunting task, as the characters were beloved for their animated expressions and chemistry. The chosen actors, whose performances have been praised by critics, managed to embody their essence rather than imitate them. Hiccup's actor captures the vulnerability, intelligence, and awkward heroism that made him iconic, while Astrid's portrayal balances strength and tenderness with nuance. Their relationship, now portrayed with real human faces, carries an intimacy that animation hinted at but could never physically manifest. Every glance, every subtle touch adds layers of realism that draw the audience deeper into their bond. The shift to live action also allowed the filmmakers to expand the lore of the dragon world. The hidden world, glimpsed briefly in the third animated film, now becomes a fully realized realm. A bioluminescent wonderland of ancient rock formations, waterfalls, and floating embers. Dragons of every color, shape, and temperament fill the screen in mesmerizing detail. The use of volumetric lighting creates an atmosphere that feels sacred, a hidden paradise untouched by human corruption. Here, the transformation from animation to live action feels most profound. The viewer no longer imagines the hidden world. They enter it. From a technical standpoint, How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, represents a new standard for hybrid filmmaking. The team used a combination of motion capture, animatronics, and photoreal CGI to make human-dragon interaction seamless. Actors often performed scenes with full-sized animatronic dragon heads built for lighting reference and eyeline accuracy. These practical elements, later enhanced by CGI, give the film its tactile quality. A sense that dragons physically exist within the same space as the actors. This realism grounds the fantasy, making the emotional stakes feel authentic. Sound design plays an equally vital role in the transformation. The roar of Toothless's plasma blasts, the rustle of wings slicing through air, the thunder of landing claws, all are mixed with real-world acoustic elements like wind, fire, and stone. This auditory realism heightens immersion, making the world of Berk feel tangible. Composer John Powell returns with a reimagined score that blends the iconic themes of the original trilogy with new orchestral arrangements. The music evolves as the visuals do. Familiar yet grander, nostalgic yet freshly emotional. Another key aspect of this transformation is how the film honors its emotional DNA. Animation allowed the original trilogy to express emotions through color and exaggeration. Live action replaces that with texture and intimacy. The close-up shots of Hiccup's trembling hand as he reaches for Toothless, the flicker of reflection in a dragon's eye, the texture of dirt and ash on the battlefield. These sensory details create emotional realism that animation could only suggest. The camera's ability to linger on micro-expressions deepens our connection to the characters in ways only live action can achieve. But perhaps the most significant transformation lies in the thematic maturity of the film. Where the animated trilogy explored coming of age and acceptance, the live-action version examines legacy, loss, and rediscovery. It feels like a story told not just for children, but for the adults who once were children, those who grew up with Hiccup and Toothless and are now returning to their world with older, wiser eyes. The film acknowledges that growth means change, but it also reassures viewers that the heart of a story can survive any transformation. Critics and fans alike have praised How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, for achieving what few remakes do. It honors its origins while justifying its existence. It isn't simply a rehash of old material with better visuals. It's a reinterpretation that deepens emotional impact through realism. The dragons are not more believable because they look real. They are more believable because their world, relationships, and emotions now carry tangible weight. The transformation from animation to live action becomes symbolic of Hiccup's own journey. From boy to man, from dreamer to leader, from the simplicity of youth to the complexity of adulthood. Youth to the complexity of adulthood. When it comes to cinematic storytelling, few names evoke as much admiration and respect as DeBlois, the visionary, filmmaker who transformed a children's book series about a boy and his dragon into one of the most emotionally profound trilogies in animation history. With How to Train Your Dragon 2025, DeBlois undertook what many considered an impossible task, reimagining his own animated masterpiece into a live-action epic without losing the magic, heart, and humanity that made the original unforgettable. This new chapter wasn't just a remake. It was the realization of a dream DeBlois had carried for years. His vision wasn't to simply repeat history, but to expand it, breathing new life into Berk, its dragons, and its characters for a new generation of dreamers. From the beginning, DeBlois understood that this project required a delicate balance, honoring what fans loved while pushing the boundaries of what the story could be. During early production interviews, he explained that How to Train Your Dragon was never about spectacle or visual effects. It was about the emotional bond between two souls who, against all odds, found understanding in a divided world. That emotional essence became his compass throughout the remake's development. Every creative decision, from the casting to the cinematography, was guided by one simple question. Does this serve the heart of the story? DeBlois' approach to the 2025 remake was deeply personal. For him, returning to Berk wasn't just a professional endeavor. It was a homecoming. The original trilogy had defined over a decade of his career and cemented his reputation as a master of emotionally charged visual storytelling. Yet, he always felt that the world of How to Train Your Dragon had more to offer, not necessarily in new stories, but in new perspectives. The animated films had relied on the expressive power of animation to evoke emotion. This time, he wanted audiences to feel it through human touch, real light, and tangible texture. To achieve this, DeBlois envisioned a world that felt both ancient and alive, a place where myth and reality coexist seamlessly. He rejected the overly polished look common in fantasy films, instead opting for an aesthetic that was rugged, weathered, and authentic. Berk, under his direction, feels lived in. Every wooden plank, every stone tower, every thread of Hiccup's tunic tells a story. The cinematography, led by the Oscar-winning Roger Deakins, who also served as visual consultant for the animated trilogy, was designed to capture natural light in a way that mirrored the emotional arcs of the characters. In the first half of the film, Berk is shot through mist and subdued colors, symbolizing the uncertainty of a world on the brink of change. As Hiccup and Toothless rekindle their bond, the palette shifts. Skies brighten, the sea glimmers, and the hidden world is introduced in an explosion of color and light. DeBlois used this visual progression to mirror emotional growth. "Light is emotion," he said in an interview. "When the characters find hope, the world around them responds." But DeBlois' vision went beyond visuals. His true genius lay in how he redefined the relationship between humans and dragons in a live-action context. In animation, dragons could be exaggerated, whimsical, and expressive without losing believability. In live action, realism demanded restraint. Too much human-like emotion in a dragon's face could break immersion, while too little could make them seem hollow. DeBlois spent months with ILM's VFX team fine-tuning every blink, breath, and movement. He insisted that dragons behave like real animals, curious, intelligent, yet unpredictable. The subtle rise and fall of Toothless's chest, the flick of his tail, the dilation of his pupils. Every motion was carefully choreographed to reflect emotion without anthropomorphism. This level of detail stemmed from DeBlois' philosophy that emotion lies in observation, not exaggeration. He famously told his team, A dragon doesn't need to smile to show affection. Sometimes, a look or a gesture says more than words ever could. That principle became a cornerstone of the remake's emotional authenticity. The result is that audiences don't see CGI creatures. They see living beings with soul and presence. Casting was another crucial part of Dean's vision. The live-action remake presented the challenge of finding actors who could embody iconic characters like Hiccup, Astrid, Stoic, and Gobber without simply mimicking their animated versions. DeBlois wanted performers who could bring fresh interpretations while respecting the emotional DNA of their roles. The search for Hiccup was particularly intense. He needed someone who could balance vulnerability with leadership, a young actor capable of conveying intelligence, insecurity, and quiet strength. When the final choice was announced, fans were initially cautious, but DeBlois' confidence never wavered. He saw in his lead the same spark that made the animated Hiccup timeless, the ability to feel deeply and lead courageously. Astrid's casting was equally intentional. DeBlois described her as the heart of Berk's courage, not just Hiccup's partner, but his equal in strength and conviction. He sought an actress who could portray Astrid's warrior spirit with subtle femininity, ensuring that her live-action portrayal transcended stereotype. Together, their chemistry became the emotional engine of the film, reflecting DeBlois' long-held belief that love in storytelling is not about romance, but about mutual respect and shared destiny. Another key aspect of DeBlois' vision was world-building through authenticity. He didn't want Berk to look like a fantasy village pulled from a green-screen studio. Instead, he insisted on shooting in real-world environments across Iceland, Scotland, and Norway. The production team built massive, functioning sets, entire Viking villages constructed along coastal cliffs, complete with working blacksmith forges, dragon stables, and watchtowers. The realism of these sets gave the actors a physical world to inhabit, grounding their performances in tangible space. "You can feel when something's real," DeBlois said. "You see it in the way light hits a wall or how smoke curls through air. That's what makes fantasy believable." For the dragon sequences, DeBlois combined practical and digital filmmaking techniques in groundbreaking ways. Life-size dragon models were constructed for close-up shots, allowing actors to physically interact with their dragon companions. For flight scenes, motion platforms and wind tunnels were used to simulate the sensation of flying, giving performers genuine reactions that CGI alone could never replicate. This hybrid approach made the bond between humans and dragons not only visible, but palpable. Music, too, played a monumental role in bringing DeBlois' vision to life. Longtime collaborator John Powell returned to compose the score, reimagining the classic themes from the original trilogy with a live symphony orchestra and Nordic instruments like the tagelharpa and nyckelharpa. Powell and DeBlois worked side by side to ensure the music evolved with the story, at times intimate and haunting, at others grand and triumphant. The signature test drive motif reappears in the live-action version, but with deeper orchestration, evoking both nostalgia and renewal. The score doesn't just accompany the film. It breathes with it, reinforcing DeBlois' belief that music is the emotional language of dragons. Behind the camera, DeBlois remained deeply involved in every creative decision. He storyboarded key sequences himself, sketching flight patterns and camera movements as he once did for the animated films. His attention to cinematic rhythm, how movement, light, and emotion flow together, is evident in every frame. The iconic first flight sequence between Hiccup and Toothless is reimagined here as a visceral, heart-pounding experience. The camera follows them through real clouds, across cliffs, and over roaring seas, making audiences feel the thrill and danger of flight like never before. Despite its massive scale, DeBlois never lost sight of the story's emotional intimacy. He often reminded his crew that the film's heart lies not in dragonfire or visual spectacle, but in quiet moments, the pauses between words, the shared gaze between Hiccup and Toothless, the silence after a loss. Those moments, he believed, are what make a story timeless. His directorial philosophy echoes the greats like Spielberg and Miyazaki, filmmakers who understood that wonder, only matters when it serves emotion. DeBlois also viewed the live-action remake as an opportunity to explore themes that had matured alongside the audience. Where the animated trilogy focused on growing up, the 2025 version reflects on growing older, the evolution of relationships, the burden of legacy, and the reconciliation between progress and tradition. Hiccup's journey now resonates not just with children, but with adults who have faced the weight of responsibility and change. It's a story about letting go, DeBlois said, but also about finding the courage to begin again. This emotional maturity extends to Stoic's character, whose presence looms large even in absence. DeBlois expanded on Hiccup's memories of his father, using them as moral echoes guiding his decisions. Through flashbacks and dream sequences, Stoic's wisdom continues to shape Berk's future. This narrative choice reinforces DeBlois' recurring motif of legacy through love, the idea that those we lose never truly leave us if we carry their lessons forward. When news broke that How to Train Your Dragon would receive a live-action remake, the excitement was matched only by the anxiety of fans across the globe. How could any actor possibly capture the charm, innocence, and evolution of characters like Hiccup, Astrid, Stoic, and Toothless, characters that had lived vividly in animation for over a decade? The announcement ignited passionate debates across social media, but as details emerged, it became clear that Dean DeBlois and Universal Pictures weren't simply recreating roles, they were reimagining legends. Every casting decision in How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, reflects a careful balance of nostalgia, innovation, and emotional truth. From the very beginning, DeBlois made one thing clear. This was not about replacing animated icons but translating their spirits into flesh and blood. In animation, emotions can be heightened through design and exaggeration. Every smile, gesture, and tear is deliberately stylized to amplify feeling. In live action, however, actors must ground those same emotions in realism without losing the magic. Finding the perfect balance required not just good acting, but deep understanding of what each character represents in the heart of the story. Hiccup, horrendous Haddock III, the soul of the saga casting Hiccup, the awkward, intelligent, and kind-hearted Viking boy who changes his world through empathy, was perhaps the most crucial and challenging decision in the entire production. The original animated Hiccup, voiced by Jay Baruchel, became iconic for his hesitant speech, youthful idealism, and gradual transformation from outcast to leader. In live action, this evolution had to feel even more profound, grounded in the physical and emotional realities of a world that looks and feels real. After a long search across continents, Dean DeBlois and Universal landed on Mason Thames, the breakout star from The Black Phone. Mason's ability to portray vulnerability and inner strength simultaneously made him the perfect fit. At just 17, he carried the emotional depth needed to capture both the boyish awkwardness and the growing wisdom that define Hiccup's journey. His screen tests reportedly left DeBlois speechless, not because he mimicked the animated version, but because he brought something new. Mason's Hiccup is less of a caricature and more of a living, breathing teenager struggling with identity and belonging. His physical performance, the hesitant movements, the nervous laughter, the thoughtful stares, reflects the realism that animation could only suggest. On screen, his chemistry with Toothless, a hybrid of CGI and practical effects, feels heartbreakingly authentic. In interviews, Mason revealed that DeBlois encouraged him to think of Toothless not as a digital creature, but as a friend who sees your soul. That mindset allowed Mason to perform with an honesty that transcends special effects. In the film, Hiccup's arc unfolds with new emotional layers. He's no longer just the misunderstood boy trying to prove himself. He's a visionary caught between the old ways of Berk and the new possibilities dragons represent. His quiet rebellion becomes symbolic of progress clashing with tradition, a theme that resonates powerfully in today's world. Mason captures this conflict beautifully, portraying Hiccup not as a typical hero, but as a thoughtful dreamer who leads with empathy rather than ego. Astrid Hofferson. The Heart and Fire of Berk. Where Hiccup embodies intellect and compassion, Astrid represents courage, loyalty, and spirit. She's the fire to his calm, the warrior who keeps him grounded and challenges his idealism. Finding an actress who could balance toughness with tenderness was another monumental task. The production ultimately cast Nico Parker, known for her nuanced performance in HBO's The Last of Us. Nico's portrayal redefines Astrid for the modern audience. In animation, Astrid was a fierce young Viking with sharp instincts and unwavering determination. In live action, she becomes even more layered. A strong fighter who wrestles with her fears, pride, and the vulnerability of love. Nico brings emotional maturity and physical authenticity to the role. She trained for months in archery, sword fighting, and horseback riding to ensure her movements felt instinctive rather than choreographed. What truly sets Nico's Astrid apart is her emotional intelligence. Her connection with Hiccup isn't framed as a romantic subplot, but as a partnership of equals. Two people who grow stronger because they trust and challenge each other. Their chemistry on screen is natural and sincere, built on respect rather than cliché. Astrid's development in the remake also expands her leadership role. She's not just a warrior, but a strategist, a mentor to younger Vikings, and a voice of reason when the village faces fear of Dragon's return. Stoic the Vast, a father. Reborn, if Hiccup is the heart of the story, Stoic the Vast is its foundation. In the animated films, Stoic, voiced by Gerard Butler, became an icon. The stoic Viking chief whose gruff exterior hides deep paternal love. His relationship with Hiccup was the emotional core of the trilogy, exploring the pain of generational misunderstanding and the beauty of reconciliation. In the 2025 remake, Gerard Butler himself returns, not as a voice actor this time, but as Stoic in live action. This casting decision was met with thunderous applause from fans worldwide. Butler's presence brings authenticity, continuity, and emotional gravitas that few other choices could have achieved. Watching him embody Stoic in human form feels like a full-circle moment. A father figure not only for Hiccup, but for the entire legacy of the franchise. DeBlois worked closely with Butler to evolve Stoic's character for live action. This version of Stoic isn't merely a stern leader, he's a man shaped by loss, pride, and the unspoken grief of a world that once knew dragons. His dynamic with Hiccup is more intimate, grounded in subtle expressions rather than loud confrontations. Butler's weathered face, his gravelly voice, and the raw vulnerability he brings to the role make Stoic's journey both heartbreaking and inspiring. A particularly powerful scene early in the film shows Stoic gazing at an old dragon helmet, a relic from a time long gone. Without a word, his eyes tell the story of years spent suppressing belief, protecting his people from a world that no longer exists. That quiet pain becomes a recurring motif, reminding the audience that leadership often carries unseen burdens. Gobber the Belch. Comic relief, with heart a story as emotionally charged as How to Train Your Dragon, needs warmth, humor, and humanity, and that's where Gobber the Belch comes in. The blacksmith and mentor to Hiccup, Gobber is equal parts comic relief and moral compass. For the live-action version, DeBlois cast David Harbour, Stranger Things Hellboy, a decision that immediately felt perfect. Harbour's Gobber is rough, hilarious, and surprisingly tender. His natural charisma and comedic timing give the film moments of levity, while his gravitas anchors the story's deeper themes. DeBlois gave Gobber more emotional weight in the remake, expanding his role as the bridge between Stoic's generation and Hiccup's. In one memorable scene, Gobber tells Hiccup, "It's not the dragon you tame, lad. It's the fear inside you." That single line encapsulates the soul of the story. Toothless. From animation to living legend, Translating Toothless into live action was both the film's greatest technical challenge and its most emotional achievement. In the animated films, Toothless was expressive, cat-like, and impossibly endearing, a creature that felt more human than monster. In the remake, ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, and DeBlois spent years perfecting his design. The live-action Toothless isn't a direct copy of his animated counterpart, but a reimagined creature of myth and nature. His scales shimmer with iridescent detail. His movements are grounded in biological realism. Yet, despite his lifelike presence, Toothless retains his soulful eyes and mischievous charm. To help Mason Thames perform authentic interactions, a large-scale animatronic version of Toothless was built for close-up shots. The combination of CGI and practical effects creates seamless realism. Audiences truly believe he's there. Emotionally, Toothless's reintroduction is one of the film's most powerful moments. When he emerges from the shadows, older and wiser, his presence evokes both awe and nostalgia. His silent communication with Hiccup, a look, a breath, a shared heartbeat, reminds viewers that love transcends words, supporting cast and world expansion. Beyond the central characters, the remake introduces fresh faces that expand Berk's community. Actors like Archie Madekwe, Rachel Ziegler, and Luke Evans join the ensemble as Viking leaders, dragon scholars, and explorers. Each character adds texture to the world, voices of doubt, curiosity, and courage that enrich the film's social dynamics. DeBlois also used casting as a way to reflect a more diverse and inclusive Berk. The Vikings of 2025's How to Train Your Dragon come from varied backgrounds, emphasizing unity through difference, a subtle yet powerful evolution of the original theme of acceptance, chemistry, legacy, and transformation. The true success of any ensemble lies in chemistry, and here DeBlois achieves perfection. The bond between Mason Thames and Nico Parker anchors the film with authenticity, while Gerard Butler's stoic adds generational resonance. Together, they form a believable family, imperfect, loving, and resilient. What makes these casting choices brilliant is not just the talent involved, but the intent behind them. Each actor embodies their role not as a copy, but as a continuation. In the grand landscape of cinematic fantasy, few worlds have ever felt as alive, as immersive, and as emotionally resonant as the island of Berk in How to Train Your Dragon, 2025. Under Dean DeBlois' masterful direction, the transition from animation to live action wasn't merely a visual upgrade, it was an act of world-building artistry. The challenge was monumental. To transform an animated Viking village from the realm of stylized imagination into a living, breathing place that audiences could almost reach out and touch. Every stone, every gust of wind, every flicker of fire in Berk's hearths had to feel authentic. Not like fantasy, but like history. To achieve this, the production team didn't rely solely on CGI. Instead, they fused practical sets, real-world landscapes, and cutting-edge digital artistry into a seamless cinematic experience. The result is one of the most visually stunning and emotionally grounded fantasy worlds ever created for film. A place that feels as though it has existed for centuries before the cameras ever rolled. The soul of Berk. Designing a living world, Dean DeBlois once said that Berk should feel like a character in its own right, as expressive and emotional as any human or dragon in the story. That philosophy guided every design choice. For the live-action adaptation, production designer Patrick Tatopoulos, known for 300, I Am Legend, and Maleficent, joined the team to reimagine Berk as a real Viking settlement rooted in Norse history but elevated by mythic atmosphere. The design process began with extensive research. The art department studied Scandinavian architecture, Norse mythology, and ancient seafaring communities to ensure authenticity. The challenge was to strike a balance. Berk needed to look functional, with believable engineering and weathered textures, yet still magical enough to evoke awe. It's not just a village, Totopoulos explained. It's a civilization that learned to coexist with dragons. Every building, bridge, and tower had to reflect that harmony. The new Berk sprawls across towering cliffs and sweeping coastlines. Its buildings are carved from timber and stone, with dragon-scale roofing that glistens subtly under sunlight. Enormous perches jut out over the ocean, designed as landing zones for dragons. Rope bridges sway between cliffs, smoke rises from blacksmith forges, and carved runes glow faintly with dragonfire residue. Every detail tells a story, a blend of Viking craftsmanship and mythical symbiosis. In one sweeping aerial shot, the camera soars over Berk at dawn. The sea mist curls around wooden towers, and sunlight pierces through gaps in the clouds, illuminating the village in gold. This isn't CGI spectacle for its own sake. It's cinematic poetry, a world breathing, pulsing, and alive with history. The visual philosophy, blending realism and magic DeBlois, and cinematographer Roger Deakins, who returned as a visual consultant, agreed early on that the film's visual style should rest on naturalism. Unlike many fantasy blockbusters that drench their worlds in color and artificial light, How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, grounds its magic in the real, making every moment of wonder feel earned. Deakin's philosophy was simple yet profound. If everything is magical, nothing feels magical. Thus, the everyday life of Berk is lit and shot like historical drama, earthy, moody, tactile. Then, when dragons appear, the lighting subtly transforms. The world becomes warmer, more vibrant, as though the presence of dragons literally brings color back into humanity's life. The result is breathtaking. Scenes of Hiccup walking through fog-shrouded forests carry the quiet melancholy of a northern winter, while dragonflight sequences burst into light and freedom. The juxtaposition between grounded realism and soaring fantasy creates emotional rhythm. When dragons take to the skies, the audience feels that lift in their bones. The color grading also plays a vital storytelling role. Early scenes of Berk are dominated by desaturated blues and grays, symbolizing a world that has forgotten dragons. As the story progresses and dragons return, the palette warms. Emerald greens, golden oranges, and deep reds bleed back into the frame, mirroring the emotional reawakening of its people. Building Berk. The power of practical sets. Rather than constructing Berk entirely in CGI, DeBlois insisted on building large-scale physical sets to anchor the performances in reality. Filming took place primarily in Iceland, Scotland, and the Faroe Islands, chosen for their raw, untouched landscapes that naturally resemble the animated Berk. The production constructed a full-scale Viking village along the Icelandic coastline, complete with functioning forges, mead halls, and watchtowers. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Viking longboats were hand-built using traditional techniques, and every structure was aged to appear centuries old. Real fires burned in the hearths, smoke drifted through wooden beams, and livestock wandered through the muddy streets. Actors frequently commented that stepping onto set felt like stepping back in time. Mason Thames, Hiccup, described it as the most immersive environment imaginable. You could smell the salt in the air, feel the cold wind, and hear the waves crashing below the cliffs. This realism influenced performances profoundly. When Hiccup stands before his village, torn between duty and dream, the setting amplifies his internal conflict. The tangible world of Berk makes his emotional journey visceral. Dragons in the flesh. The evolution of visual effects, if Berk is the heart of the film, then dragons are its soul, and bringing them to life in live action required the combined genius of industrial light and magic, ILM, Weta FX, and legacy effects. The goal wasn't just to make dragons look real, but to make them feel real. The animation team began by studying real animals, cats, eagles, wolves, and even bats, to craft movement patterns for different dragon species. Toothless, the Night Fury, was given special attention. His sleek black form had to balance menace and warmth, danger and love. For close-up scenes, ILM built an animatronic version of Toothless with hundreds of moving servos, capable of blinking, breathing, and subtly shifting expressions. Mason Thames often acted directly with this practical model, allowing genuine emotional interaction. For flight scenes, DeBlois used a hybrid system. Actors rode motion rigs surrounded by LED screens projecting pre-rendered skies. This technique, inspired by The Mandalorian's volume technology, allowed realistic lighting reflections on faces and costumes. The result, Hiccup and Toothless's aerial sequences look breathtakingly real, with wind, sunlight, and cloud textures responding dynamically to motion. Every dragon in the film was uniquely designed. The deadly Natter, monstrous nightmare, Grunkle, and hideous Zippleback each received updated textures inspired by reptilian biology. Their wings feature translucent membranes that catch light like real animal skin. Even the way light refracts through dragon scales was simulated with physics-based rendering. The attention to detail is staggering. Viewers can see tiny scars, molten embers under scales, and mist rising from dragon nostrils in the cold air. But realism wasn't the ultimate goal. Believability was. The dragons don't feel like monsters or machines. They feel like living beings with emotion and intelligence. The way Toothless tilts his head, the way his pupils contract when sensing fear, or how he gently nudges Hiccup's hand. These moments transcend technology and touch the human heart. The art of flight. Cinematic majesty. Of the most defining elements of the How to Train Your Dragon franchise is its flight sequences, moments of pure, wordless transcendence. In the 2025 version, DeBlois sought to make audiences feel the sensation of flight more intensely than ever before. Using IMAX cameras mounted on drone rigs and virtual cinematography tools, the team created aerial sequences that merge physical landscapes with digital skies. In one of the film's most iconic scenes, Hiccup and Toothless soar through a thunderstorm. Lightning illuminates their silhouettes against the clouds, rain lashes across the camera lens, and the sound design places viewers directly in the cockpit of chaos. It's not just thrilling, it's spiritual. The sequence becomes a metaphor for courage, flying through fear to find freedom. The test drive scene, a beloved moment from the original, is reimagined here with breathtaking realism. As the orchestra swells, the camera dips, rolls, and climbs with the dragons, using long, unbroken takes that give a sense of physical continuity. The audience doesn't just watch, they fly. The Hidden World, a visual masterpiece. No discussion of the remake's visual design would be complete without mentioning The Hidden World, the legendary sanctuary where dragons once fled. For this, DeBlois envisioned a subterranean wonderland glowing with bioluminescent life. The design team combined references from deep-sea ecosystems, Icelandic lava caves, and the Northern Lights to create an environment unlike anything ever seen on film. The cave walls shimmer with crystalline structures that reflect dragon fire. Rivers of glowing water wind through towering stone arches. When dragons gather here, their colors create a symphony of light, a breathtaking visual metaphor for coexistence and unity. The use of practical effects again elevates realism. Portions of the Hidden World were physically built using translucent resin and embedded LED panels, allowing real light to interact with fog and water. The blend of tangible materials and digital augmentation creates depth that feels otherworldly yet believable. Sound, light, and texture. The Sensory Symphony. The Sensory Symphony. At its core, How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, is not merely a fantasy adventure about Vikings and dragons. It's an emotional odyssey about the bonds that define us, the pain of letting go, and the beauty of love that transcends worlds. Beneath the soaring flight sequences and breathtaking visuals lies a story that speaks to something timeless and universal, the fragile yet unbreakable connection between two souls from different worlds. The emotional center of the film lies in Hiccup and Toothless, whose friendship remains one of the most beloved and heartfelt relationships in modern cinema. But in the 2025 remake, their bond takes on a deeper, more mature layer. It's no longer just about discovery and learning to coexist. It's about memory, legacy, and what happens when love demands sacrifice. DeBlois crafts this journey with the patience and precision of a poet, weaving together moments of joy, heartbreak, and redemption into a story that lingers long after the credits fade. The foundation of friendship. From their first meeting, the film reintroduces Hiccup and Toothless with fresh emotional intensity. Gone are the playful beats of Boy Meets Dragon. Instead, their encounter feels like destiny rekindled. Hiccup, now older and burdened with the expectations of leadership, is no longer the reckless dreamer of his youth. He's a man defined by longing for the past, for the friend he lost, and for the sense of belonging that once came from soaring through the skies beside Toothless when he discovers a wounded night fury in the wilderness, the same Toothless, who vanished years ago. It's not a reunion played for spectacle. It's quiet, hesitant, and intimate. The camera lingers on Hiccup's trembling hands as he reaches out, unsure if the dragon he once called brother still remembers him. Toothless's eyes, deep and intelligent, study him with cautious recognition. Then, in a moment of silence, Toothless steps closer. A bridge rebuilt not through words, but through trust. That single gesture encapsulates the emotional philosophy of how to train your dragon. Friendship as faith. Two beings, scarred by time and separation, finding their way back to one another through empathy and love. It's a reminder that real friendship isn't about perfection. It's about acceptance. The evolution of trust in. The animated trilogy, Hiccup and Toothless's relationship grew from curiosity to companionship to heartbreak. The live-action remake carries that evolution forward with emotional gravity. Trust is no longer something easily earned. It's something rediscovered. Both characters have changed. Toothless has become more cautious, more primal after years away from humans. Hiccup, haunted by his choices, carries guilt and fear. Their journey toward reconciliation mirrors the process of healing. Tentative steps, relapses, and small moments of forgiveness. When Toothless first allows Hiccup to touch his snout again, the scene unfolds in absolute stillness. There's no dialogue, no music, just the sound of breathing and the wind through the trees. The silence becomes sacred, symbolizing the unspoken bond that transcends species. DeBlois once said that this story is about learning to let love grow, not control it. In that sense, Hiccup and Toothless embody a relationship beyond friendship. One that resembles parent and child, mentor and pupil, or even two halves of a single spirit. Loss and the price of love. The emotional intensity of the film deepens as it explores the inevitability of loss. Every great bond in life carries the shadow of separation, and How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, confronts this truth head-on. Midway through the film, Berk faces a new existential threat. A ruthless dragon hunter named Dravik, who believes dragons must be harnessed or destroyed. His arrival reopens old wounds in the Viking community, forcing Hiccup to choose between protecting his people and safeguarding his dragon friend. This conflict mirrors real-world struggles between fear and empathy, progress and preservation. The turning point arrives in one of the film's most hauntingly beautiful sequences. Toothless sacrifices himself to save Hiccup during a battle in the skies. As fire engulfs the horizon, Toothless shields Hiccup with his wings, his roars echoing through the storm. The camera pulls back, showing the two silhouettes, one human, one dragon, falling together through clouds of fire and rain. When Hiccup awakens, Toothless is gone. What follows is not just grief, but an aching emptiness, a silence that fills the world. The dragon who once completed him is no longer there, and Berk's skies feel colder, emptier, lifeless. It's a portrayal of loss not as a dramatic twist, but as an emotional truth, that love, by its very nature, comes with pain. This grief drives the second half of the film, a journey not to find Toothless, but to understand what their bond meant. Through flashbacks, dreams, and echoes of memory, Hiccup comes to realize that Toothless's sacrifice was not an end, but a legacy. Legacy and the meaning of love. The film's subtitle could easily have been Legacy of the Night Fury, because everything Hiccup does from that point forward stems from what he learned from Toothless. He rebuilds Berk not as a fortress, but as a sanctuary, a place where dragons and humans can live side by side in peace. There's a quiet scene late in the film that encapsulates this transformation. Hiccup stands before a young generation of children, telling them the story of the dragon who taught him how to be human. His voice breaks as he describes Toothless's courage, loyalty, and love. The camera pans across the children's faces, wide-eyed, hopeful, and we see the power of legacy. Love, once shared, never truly dies. It ripples outward, shaping new lives, new stories. In many ways, Toothless becomes a symbol of the best parts of humanity: compassion, loyalty, and the courage to forgive. Hiccup's story becomes not just one of personal growth, but of cultural evolution. Through his friendship, he redefines what it means to be strong, not through domination or war, but through empathy and connection. The power of goodbye. The emotional climax of How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, is not found in its battles, but in its goodbyes. Hiccup finally finds Toothless again. Older, wiser, now leading a family of dragons in the hidden world. Their reunion is bittersweet. Toothless recognizes Hiccup instantly, nuzzling him gently, but their connection has changed. They are equals now. Two leaders, two fathers, two souls whose paths have diverged but whose love remains. The farewell scene mirrors the iconic ending of the 2019 film, but here it's rendered with even more emotional weight. Hiccup removes his dragon armor, kneels, and whispers, "Thank you for everything." Toothless closes his eyes and leans forward, pressing his forehead to Hiccup's. It's not a farewell in words, but in spirit, a mutual acknowledgement that love means letting go when the time comes. As Hiccup walks away, the score swells, a fusion of human voices and dragon roars. The camera follows him as he looks back one final time. Toothless takes off into the sunrise, his wings slicing through golden light. It's not a moment of loss, but of transcendence. Love ascending into eternity. Emotional symbolism. The dragon. Within, throughout the film, dragons are more than mythical creatures. They're metaphors for the parts of ourselves we must learn to understand and cherish. Toothless represents freedom, instinct, and vulnerability, the wildness within every human heart. Hiccup's journey to befriend Toothless is, on a symbolic level, the journey of every person learning to accept their own fears and dreams. By the end, when Hiccup lets Toothless go, it signifies self-acceptance. He no longer needs to tame the dragon within. He's learned to live in harmony with it. This emotional truth gives the film a universal resonance that transcends genre or age. The music of a motion composer. John Powell returns with a score that serves as the emotional heartbeat of the film. The music mirrors the story's evolution, starting with soft, melancholic strings and gradually swelling into majestic orchestral themes as dragons return. Powell introduces a new motif called Legacy of Fire, built around a haunting flute melody intertwined with choral harmonies. It captures both the sorrow of parting and the eternal bond between friends who refuse to be forgotten. During the final flight scene, when Toothless and his offspring soar across the dawn sky, the music becomes a triumphant requiem, equal parts grief and glory. It's an auditory embodiment of love's endurance, a sound that feels both ancient and eternal, a universal message in its quietest moments. How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, speaks to every person who's ever loved and lost, every friendship that shaped us, every goodbye that hurt, every memory that refused to fade. It reminds us that love doesn't end when presence does. It continues in what we build, in who we become, and in the stories we tell. Hiccup's story is not just his own. It's ours. It's the story of finding connection in a divided world, of choosing empathy over fear, and of understanding that sometimes the greatest act of love is the courage to let go. As the film closes, the narrator's voice, older, softer, wiser, whispers, "Once we lived among dragons. Now they live within us." It's a line that encapsulates the entire emotional journey. The friendship between Hiccup and Toothless may have begun as fantasy, but it ends as truth. The kind of truth that lives forever in the hearts of those who dare to love. Forever in the hearts of those who dare to love. The hidden world, the fabled subterranean sanctuary, where dragons dwell beyond human reach, stands as one of the most breathtaking and spiritually charged creations in How to Train Your Dragon. 2025. In Dean DeBlois' live-action reimagining, this mythic realm becomes more than a spectacular visual achievement. It's the metaphoric heart of the film, a realm where fantasy and philosophy intertwine. It is the soul of the dragon race, the mirror of human imagination, and the ultimate destination in Hiccup's long quest to understand what coexistence truly means. The concept of the hidden world. In the original animated trilogy, the hidden world was glimpsed as a glowing Eden at the Earth's core, a paradise where dragons could live unthreatened by humankind. The 2025 adaptation expands this idea into something far grander and more mythic. The hidden world isn't merely a secret refuge. It is a living organism, a breathing, evolving ecosystem that reacts to the emotions of its inhabitants. The filmmakers imagined it as both a physical location and a symbolic realm, part dream, part memory, part afterlife for the imagination. Dean DeBlois described it as the subconscious of the world, a place where all the beauty and danger of creation coexist. This guiding principle shapes every visual and thematic decision. It is the convergence of all stories, all species, all dreams. To explore it is to confront the boundaries between myth and reality. The journey into the unknown. The film builds anticipation for this place with almost religious reverence. From the earliest scenes, whispers of the hidden world echo through Viking legends and ancient songs. Maps hint at an abyss beyond the edge of the sea, where waterfalls fall into endless darkness and light itself bends. For Hiccup, these myths become a compass, not just toward dragons, but toward self-discovery. When the moment finally arrives, the descent into the hidden world, it unfolds as one of the most awe-inspiring sequences ever captured on film. Hiccup and Astrid, mounted on their dragons, glide into a storm of bioluminescent mist. The ocean splits open like a curtain, revealing a colossal spiral vortex glowing with blue fire. The camera plunges downward, swirling with them through miles of water illuminated by streaks of light, until they break through the other side into a world untouched by sun or moon. The silence hits first, a deep, sacred stillness. Then, slowly, the environment awakens. Giant crystals pulse with light. Rivers of molten gold flow through obsidian rock. Caverns expand into cathedral-like chambers where thousands of dragons perch along the walls, their eyes glinting like constellations. The hidden world is not just seen, it is felt. Every color, sound, and breath carries the weight of discovery. The design philosophy, to bring this subterranean wonderland to life. The design team studied volcanic caves in Iceland, deep-sea ecosystems, and the aurora borealis. The guiding idea was contrast, an environment both alien and organic, terrifying yet tranquil. The visual language evolved around three key elements: light, motion, and reflection. Light is life in the hidden world. The dragons themselves generate it. Scales shimmer with bioluminescent energy that pulses to their heartbeat. When 1,000 dragons take flight, the air fills with ribbons of color like a living aurora. Motion is constant yet fluid. Plants sway, crystals hum, and even the air seems alive. Reflection ties it all together. The water surfaces mirror dragonflight, creating an endless loop between sky and earth. Production designer Patrick Tatopoulos described the space as a cathedral built by nature and emotion. No straight lines exist. Everything curves, breathes, and flows. Even the sound design mirrors this fluidity. Whispers echo like underwater songs, and dragon calls reverberate in waves. The world is simultaneously infinite and intimate, grand and personal. Dragons as the soul of the hidden world. In the hidden world, dragons aren't just inhabitants, they are extensions of the environment. Each species carries a unique light signature, contributing to the realm's symphony of color. The night furies emit cool blue flames. Deadly natters glow in neon yellows, and monstrous nightmares flicker crimson. When dragons gather, the light becomes an emotional tapestry, a literal illumination of harmony. The narrative uses this visual device symbolically. When Toothless and Hiccup reunite, the entire cavern brightens, as if the world itself recognizes their bond. The filmmakers subtly tie the environmental response to emotion. When dragons fight, the light dims and fractures. When they embrace, the glow returns. It's an elegant cinematic metaphor for balance between nature and empathy. There's a particularly moving moment when Hiccup touches a crystal wall and sees faint reflections of past dragons, echoes of ancient spirits. It's a reminder that the hidden world preserves memory. It's where dragons go not only to live, but to remember. The emotional resonance of discovery beyond spectacle, the hidden world scene, functions as emotional catharsis. For Hiccup, it's the culmination of years of belief, proof that his faith in dragons was never misplaced. When he sees Toothless leading the dragon families, his eyes fill with tears not of sadness but of reverent joy. The revelation transforms his understanding of coexistence. Dragons don't belong to humans. They belong with the world. Astrid's presence grounds the moment in human emotion. Her awe, fear, and eventual acceptance echo the audience's. She remarks softly, "It's like looking at creation itself." The line encapsulates the essence of the film, the recognition that to truly love something, we must be willing to let it exist beyond our control. The hidden world thus becomes an emotional threshold. Crossing into it means accepting change, letting go of ownership, and embracing wonder. The cinematic techniques of wonder, technically, this section of the film stands as one of cinema's greatest achievements in blending live action and CGI. ILM and Weta FX collaborated on over 2,000 VFX shots to create a cohesive, physically believable world. The production used advanced volumetric lighting, giving every beam of light a tactile quality. Dust motes, mist, and dragonfire interact naturally with surfaces. The camera work adopts a lyrical, dreamlike quality. Instead of traditional cuts, the sequences glide seamlessly, mimicking the feeling of flight. Roger Deakins' visual consultation ensures that the illumination feels photographic rather than digital. Every light source has logic, every reflection behaves according to physics. The result, a fantasy realm that feels scientifically plausible. Sound plays an equally vital role. Composer John Powell integrates natural recordings of Icelandic caves with a symphonic score to create an acoustic landscape. Choirs mimic dragon calls, while strings pulse like heartbeats. As the orchestra swells, it feels as if the hidden world itself is singing, symbolism and philosophy. On a thematic level, the hidden world represents the sacred unknown, the mysteries we cannot conquer but can only witness. It's a meditation on coexistence, reminding humanity of its place within nature rather than above it. In a time when the world faces ecological collapse, this message resonates profoundly. Dean DeBlois frames the hidden world as both a literal sanctuary and a metaphor for compassion. Just as Hiccup must descend into the depths to find understanding, we too must look inward to rediscover empathy. The descent is spiritual as much as physical. The darkness below becomes the canvas upon which light, symbolizing knowledge and love, reveals meaning. The name Hidden World thus carries double meaning. It's the secret home of dragons, but also the unseen potential within the human heart. The hidden world, as a living character, perhaps the greatest triumph of the film is how it turns the environment itself into a character. The hidden world evolves throughout the story. When Hiccup first arrives, it feels alien, guarded, uncertain. As he earns the dragon's trust, the realm literally blooms. Crystals brighten, new caverns open, streams of light ripple through the darkness. It's as if the world responds emotionally to him. This dynamic relationship between character and environment reflects the symbiotic bond between humans and dragons. The world changes when we approach it with kindness. When violence erupts, the realm trembles, lights flicker, and fissures open in the ground, visualizing the cost of conflict. By the climax, when peace is restored, the hidden world glows brighter than ever before. The audience realizes that the true magic was never in the dragons themselves, but in the harmony between all living things. Legacy of the hidden world. In the film's closing moments, the hidden world becomes the ultimate symbol of faith. When Hiccup releases Toothless and his kind to return to their sanctuary, it isn't an act of loss. It's one of hope. He looks into the glowing abyss one last time, whispers goodbye, and the world answers with a pulse of light, as if acknowledging the bond between species. Years later, when Hiccup sails to the edge of the sea with his children, he glimpses a shimmer deep below the waves. The faint glow of the hidden world remains, undying. It's a promise. Dragons still live, not vanished, but waiting for a world wise enough to meet them again. The emotional and spiritual afterglow. The impact of this revelation extends beyond the film itself. The hidden world stands as a cinematic metaphor for imagination, coexistence, and faith in the unseen. It invites viewers to consider that there are realms of beauty and intelligence in our world still undiscovered, both in nature and within ourselves. Both in nature and within ourselves. The live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, doesn't just retell the original animated story, it deepens the struggles and emotional growth of Hiccup and his Viking tribe as they face new, more realistic challenges. In this version, the island of Berk feels tangible and lived in, with rough seas, unpredictable weather, and the constant tension of survival. The story captures what it truly means to live in a world where humans and dragons must coexist, not as fantasy, but as a fragile balance between trust and instinct. Hiccup, no longer just a boy proving himself, must become a true leader in a world that tests his ideals every day. His bond with Toothless remains the emotional core, but their journey now explores the cost of peace and the sacrifices required to protect it. One of the major challenges Hiccup faces in this film is the evolution of his tribe's relationship with dragons. In the earlier animated versions, the shift from fear to friendship was symbolic and idealized. Here, it feels grounded and raw. Some villagers still fear dragons, questioning Hiccup's belief that they can live side by side. Others, especially the younger generation, see dragons as a path to power, wanting to control them rather than understand them. This ideological divide creates internal conflict within Berk, a reflection of how real societies struggle to accept change. Hiccup must navigate leadership not as a hero, but as a diplomat, balancing emotion, logic, and compassion. The live-action adaptation also brings to life the environmental and political challenges of Berk. The once isolated island is now shown to be part of a larger world. Raiders, rival tribes, and ambitious warlords see dragons as tools for domination. These outside forces threaten not only Berk's peace, but also the freedom of dragons themselves. In one haunting scene, Hiccup learns of a black market network where dragon eggs are traded for gold, forcing him to confront the darker consequences of revealing the dragon's existence. It's a powerful statement on exploitation and the danger of greed when nature's wonders are turned into commodities. For Toothless 2, the new world poses challenges. As the last known Night Fury, he symbolizes both beauty and vulnerability. The film explores his loneliness and his instinct to protect his species, even when that means separating from Hiccup. Their bond is tested as Toothless begins to lead other dragons into uncharted territories, forcing both characters to evolve. The emotional tension between freedom and friendship becomes one of the movie's central themes. Can love exist without control? And can two beings from different worlds truly share one destiny? Visually, the filmmakers use this conflict to craft breathtaking, symbolic imagery. Scenes of Berk's cliffs against stormy skies mirror Hiccup's internal turmoil. The cinematography captures dragons soaring through clouds as metaphors for hope, while fires in the distance remind viewers that peace is fragile. Every frame reinforces the idea that leadership isn't about dominance. It's about responsibility. The use of natural landscapes and practical effects gives weight to the struggle, making every decision feel consequential. Another key element in this chapter of the story is Hiccup's personal growth as a leader. He's no longer the awkward boy trying to impress his father. Now he carries the burden of expectations, legacy, and morality. The movie explores how leadership often means making painful choices, sacrificing personal happiness for the greater good. When faced with the possibility of losing Toothless to protect Berk, Hiccup must confront what it means to truly let go. This storyline, brought to life through nuanced performances and emotional dialogue, makes the film's heart beat stronger than ever. Astrid's role in this version also expands significantly. She becomes not just Hiccup's partner, but his equal, a warrior and strategist who challenges his idealism with realism. Their dynamic shows a mature partnership built on mutual respect rather than romance alone. Together, they represent two sides of leadership: empathy and strength. Their conversations about the future of Berk reflect modern debates about coexistence, progress, and tradition. The supporting cast adds depth to the theme of challenge as well. Gobber's wisdom offers moments of levity but also teaches that old wounds never fully heal. Roughnut and Toughnut bring humor, yet highlight how youthful impulsiveness can lead to mistakes. Each character's growth mirrors the central conflict, learning to adapt in a world that's constantly changing. What makes the new challenges theme so compelling in How to Train Your Dragon? 2025 is its realism. Unlike the neat resolutions of typical fantasy stories, this one accepts that peace isn't permanent. It's something you must fight for every day. Dragons can be misunderstood again, humans can make mistakes, and harmony can break under pressure. Yet, the film's message remains hopeful. True friendship and courage can rebuild even the most fragile trust. By the end of this section of the story, Hiccup stands not as a dragon rider, but as a bridge between worlds. His trials redefine heroism, not as slaying monsters, but as protecting them, understanding them, and believing in something greater than fear. Through fire, loss, and courage, Hiccup and his tribe face their hardest test yet, and emerge stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. In How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, the music is not just an accessory, it's the soul of the story. From the first soaring note to the last haunting echo, the soundtrack breathes life into every moment, turning mere visuals into emotion, and transforming each scene into something unforgettable. Composer John Powell, who also crafted the original trilogy's beloved scores, returns once again, ensuring that the legacy of sound remains consistent yet elevated for a new generation. His return is one of the most celebrated aspects of this live-action remake, and audiences across the USA and beyond have called the score a cinematic heartbeat. The very first sound we hear in the movie is not dialogue or narration, it's music. A lone horn echoes through the mist, evoking both nostalgia and curiosity. It immediately tells the audience that they are returning to the world of Berk, but this time, the world feels more tangible, more real, and more emotional. Powell's orchestration builds upon the themes he created over a decade ago, but enriches them with new layers of live instrumentation and dynamic sound engineering. The combination of Celtic melodies, orchestral power, and emotional undertones gives the film its signature identity. In the live-action format, the music carries more responsibility. Without the colorful exaggeration of animation, emotions must feel organic, and that's where the soundtrack works its magic. Each instrument represents a heartbeat of the characters. The flutes and violins capture Hiccup's curiosity, the pounding drums mirror the intensity of dragon flight, and the gentle harps evoke the bond between Toothless and his rider. The result is an auditory world that makes the audience feel every triumph, every loss, and every whisper of wind between dragon wings. One of the standout themes of this remake is the bond of fire and sky motif, a powerful new melody that symbolizes Hiccup and Toothless's unbreakable connection. It starts softly, played on a solo cello, then builds into a full orchestral wave as their friendship deepens. The theme reappears throughout the film in subtle variations, sometimes as a lullaby when Toothless is injured, other times as a heroic anthem during flight scenes. This thematic recurrence gives the film emotional cohesion and mirrors the growth of its characters. When the dragons take flight, Powell's music ascends with them. The orchestra swells, bagpipes join in, and choral voices rise in harmony, creating an experience that feels both ancient and infinite. These sequences remind audiences of why How to Train Your Dragon became such a timeless series. It captures the primal thrill of freedom. In the theater, you can feel the sound reverberate through your chest, the brass and strings pulling you into the clouds. Powell once described his goal as writing music that makes you want to fly, and he achieves exactly that once again in 2025. The score's emotional impact is equally important in quieter moments. When Hiccup faces internal conflict about leadership or his relationship with Toothless, the music slows down, favoring piano and solo violin. These moments are hauntingly intimate, almost meditative. In one key scene, Hiccup looks out over the sea, questioning his decisions, while a faint melody recalls themes from the first film, a musical memory that reminds both him and the audience of how far they've come. The emotional continuity across the trilogy and now the live-action remake is what gives the franchise its enduring power. Sound designer Gary Rydstrom, a legend in his field, also contributes to blending music with ambient effects. Dragon roars are layered subtly into the lower frequencies of some tracks, making it feel as if the creatures themselves are part of the orchestra. The ocean winds, rustling leaves, and crackling fires are not just background noise. They're tuned to harmonize with the musical key of each scene. This level of sonic integration gives How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, a level of immersion rarely seen in fantasy cinema. Beyond orchestral composition, the soundtrack also features several vocal tracks that add a modern touch. One of the most talked about additions is Wings of Tomorrow, a new song written for the end credits and performed by Aurora, whose ethereal voice perfectly fits the film's tone. The song captures the themes of change, growth, and letting go, while echoing motifs from the original score. It has already gone viral on platforms like Spotify and YouTube, where fans describe it as the sound of goodbye and rebirth. Interestingly, the soundtrack also reinterprets older themes in ways that reward longtime fans. The classic Test Drive melody from the 2010 film reappears in a climactic scene, but now it's played slower, more reflective, suggesting maturity and nostalgia. Powell explained in interviews that he wanted the music to remember the past but sound like the present, and that philosophy runs throughout the score. Every returning theme feels earned, like a memory you didn't know you missed until you heard it again. The cultural influences behind the music remain one of its most distinctive traits. Powell blends Nordic folk instruments with a modern symphonic orchestra to maintain the Scandinavian roots of Berk's culture. The use of fiddles, bodhráns, and Willian pipes gives the film a grounded authenticity, while the sweeping strings and choirs add cinematic grandeur. The music feels ancient yet timeless, just like the world it represents. During battle sequences, the tempo and intensity of the soundtrack rise dramatically. Instead of relying solely on loud percussion, Powell uses rhythmic motifs that mimic dragon flight patterns, each beat representing a flap of wings, each pause a turn in the air. The synchronization of music and motion creates a visceral connection between sound and action. When Hiccup and Toothless dive toward danger, the score doesn't just accompany the scene, it becomes it. The emotional climax of the movie is underscored by one of the most breathtaking compositions in recent cinema. As Hiccup faces the possibility of losing Toothless forever, the orchestra goes silent for a brief, powerful pause. Then, a single violin note breaks the silence, fragile, trembling, and heartbreakingly human. Gradually, the full orchestra joins in, building toward a symphonic explosion that represents both sorrow and hope. It's the kind of musical storytelling that doesn't need words. Viewers describe this sequence as one of the most emotional in any How to Train Your Dragon adaptation to date. Critics in the USA have praised the soundtrack as a major reason for the movie's success. Many reviews highlight how it transcends typical fantasy scoring, offering a balance between grandeur and intimacy. The Los Angeles Times called it a masterpiece of emotional engineering, while The Hollywood Reporter wrote that John Powell doesn't just score scenes, he scores the soul of the story. It's rare for film music to receive such widespread recognition, but this franchise has always treated sound as storytelling. Even beyond the movie, the soundtrack has taken on a life of its own. Fans use tracks for YouTube edits, emotional reels, and motivational videos. The music's combination of adventure, nostalgia, and beauty resonates deeply, especially with the American audience who grew up watching the original trilogy. Powell's compositions remind them of childhood wonder while giving them something fresh to feel as adults. Ultimately, the music of How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, elevates the entire experience. It makes the air feel alive, the emotions more profound, and the world of Berk more real than ever. The fusion of orchestral excellence, cultural authenticity, and emotional depth proves once again that the franchise's true magic lies not only in dragons or visuals, but in the sound that carries them. The music isn't just background, it's the invisible dragon that lifts the story into the sky. The story into the sky. Transforming the mythical island of Berk into a real, tangible world was one of the most ambitious and breathtaking achievements of How to Train Your Dragon, 2025. What was once a digitally painted animated land full of color and whimsy has now been reimagined into a fully functional environment, a living, breathing Viking village set against the raw beauty of nature. The live-action adaptation demanded that every mountain, every hut, every cliff, and every dragon perch feel authentic. To achieve this, the filmmakers combined the power of advanced technology with the craftsmanship of traditional set design, creating one of the most detailed fantasy worlds ever seen on screen. Director DeBlois, returning from the original animated trilogy, was adamant that Berk shouldn't look like a typical fantasy village. He wanted the audience to feel the texture of every stone and hear the crunch of snow beneath Viking boots. "The audience knows this world in their hearts," DeBlois said in an interview. "We had to honor that nostalgia while grounding it in physical reality." To do that, the production design team embarked on a journey that took them across remote corners of Iceland, Norway, and Scotland, seeking the perfect blend of rugged isolation and natural grandeur that could stand in for Berk's legendary cliffs and coasts. The foundation of Berk. Real locations. Meet digital magic. The filmmakers chose to build large sections of Berk physically rather than relying solely on CGI. Around 70% of the sets were practical, with massive Viking halls, watchtowers, and homes built from real wood, stone, and iron. Production designer Simon Emanuel, known for his work on Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and The Batman, designed the architecture to feel primitive yet functional. The houses were built using Norse construction techniques, massive beams, turf roofs, and hand-carved decorations that reflected Viking mythology. However, the true magic came when these physical sets were extended digitally. Visual effects teams from Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, and Weta FX collaborated to blend physical and virtual landscapes seamlessly. Using a mix of on-location shooting and virtual production technology, they expanded the village, added towering cliffs, and rendered the dragon habitats with stunning realism. The filmmakers used LED volume stages similar to those in The Mandalorian, allowing them to project real-time environments around actors. This technique helped the cast interact naturally with their surroundings, as they could actually see Berk instead of imagining it in front of green screens. The challenge of Scale 1 of the greatest challenges was capturing the massive scale of the world. Dragons in live action are enormous creatures, some the size of buildings, so the village had to be scaled accordingly. The design team built portions of rooftops and cliffs specifically for dragon landings and takeoffs. Every piece of architecture was designed to withstand the weight of imaginary creatures. To ensure realism, the visual effects department studied bird flight, bat anatomy, and large animal locomotion to understand how dragons would move and interact with the environment. Toothless's landing areas, for example, were created with intricate detail. Claw marks in the dirt, melted snow patches from dragon fire, and broken wooden beams showing where dragons might have landed too hard. These small touches added authenticity and gave the feeling that Berk wasn't just a set. It was a real, lived-in world, bringing nature to life. The production's commitment to realism extended to natural elements as well. Weather on Berk has always been an integral part of the story. Foggy mornings, stormy nights, and radiant sunsets. Instead of relying completely on digital skies, the team filmed natural weather patterns in Iceland for months to capture authentic footage of northern light, sea spray, and snowstorms. The visual effects artists then composited these real elements into scenes, creating an ever-changing, dynamic environment that reflected Berk's wild beauty. To simulate dragon flight sequences over Berk, drones equipped with high-resolution cameras flew through actual cliffs and coastlines, giving the VFX team real aerial data for rendering realistic flight paths. This technique made the scenes feel physically possible, grounding the fantasy in natural motion, costume, and cultural design. The authenticity of Berk wasn't limited to its environment. Its people needed to look like they truly belonged there. Costume designer Joanna Johnston, who worked on Saving Private Ryan and Back to the Future, created hundreds of Viking costumes from scratch. Each outfit was made from real leather, fur, and wool, aged and weathered to show years of use in the harsh northern climate. The designs drew inspiration from Scandinavian tribal wear but were adapted to fit the movie's more heroic aesthetic. For Hiccup, his costume evolution mirrored his journey from a young dreamer to a responsible leader. Early in the film, his clothes are practical and handmade, with visible stitching and light materials to reflect agility. Later, his outfit becomes more layered and protective, incorporating dragon-scale patterns that hint at his deep bond with Toothless. Astrid's armor was made to be functional but elegant, designed for both battle and flight. These visual details helped define character arcs without words, allowing audiences to feel their growth through design. Practical effects and set. Engineering Berk's realism was also achieved through an impressive use of practical effects. Real fire was used for dragon attacks. Pyrotechnic rigs simulated burning homes, and massive wind machines replicated dragon wing gusts. The effects crew even built hydraulic dragon wings, giant animatronic structures that could move air and create realistic shadows over the actors. When dragons take off in the movie, the resulting wind you see blowing through characters' hair and clothes isn't CGI, it's real physics. The engineering behind Berk's sets was equally groundbreaking. The main village was constructed on a coastal cliff set built on location in northern Scotland. The production team faced brutal winds, freezing rain, and shifting tides, but the harsh conditions added authenticity to the scenes. The village became a character itself, weathered, proud, and enduring, much like its inhabitants. Lighting Berk, the power of natural cinematographer Greg Fraser, famous for Dune and the Batman, brought his signature atmospheric lighting style to Berk. He chose to shoot primarily in natural light, emphasizing the play of shadows, firelight, and northern sunsets. The warm glow of torches flickering against the snow created a stark contrast between the coziness of Viking life and the cold, wild exterior world. Fraser used handheld cameras for close character scenes, giving the movie a grounded documentary-like realism. For dragonflight scenes, he employed large-scale IMAX cameras mounted on custom rigs, capturing breathtaking wide shots of skies and seas. This combination of intimate and epic cinematography allowed Berk to feel both homey and immense. The role of sound design in world-building behind the scenes, the sound design also played a massive role in making Berk feel alive. Every sound, from creaking wood to the distant roar of dragons, was meticulously crafted. Sound engineers recorded real Viking ship replicas at sea to capture authentic creaks, wind rushes, and rope tension. Animal sounds were layered to form dragon roars, lions for aggression, whales for depth, and birds for shrillness. When combined with John Powell's music, the soundscape became immersive enough to transport audiences directly into Berk. Every gust of wind, every footstep on frozen soil, and every dragon's growl echoed with realism and intention. Building the heart of Berk. The Great Hall. Perhaps the most iconic set piece of all was the Great Hall of Berk. Built on a massive scale, the structure featured towering beams, hand-carved dragon motifs, and a roaring central fire pit. The filmmakers used it for some of the most emotionally powerful scenes, moments of leadership, family, and decision-making. The firelight flickering on the wood created a visual metaphor for the warmth of community amid the harshness of their world. Even in the smallest corners of Berk, the forge, the dragon stables, or Hiccup's workshop, attention to detail was obsessive. Every prop told a story. Tools had dragon-shaped handles, maps were burned and patched, and walls bore scratches from dragon claws. These details may go unnoticed at first glance, but they contribute immensely to the sense of realism. Legacy and impact. The Michirakuhi. Result of all this dedication is a Berk that feels astonishingly real, a world that honors its animated roots while expanding its scope and depth. When audiences watch How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, they don't feel like they're looking at computer effects. They feel like they've stepped into another reality. This achievement has been hailed by critics as one of the most visually stunning and immersive environments in modern cinema. Fans in the USA have especially praised how the film brings childhood imagination to life in a believable way. For many, seeing Berk realized with such care is an emotional experience, a bridge between the animated world they grew up with and the realistic world they now inhabit as adults. Behind the scenes, every craftsman, technician, and artist poured heart and soul into building this version of Berk. Their work stands as a testament to the power of filmmaking, how imagination, technology, and dedication can unite to create something timeless. Among all the cinematic creatures that have ever graced the screen, few have captured hearts like Toothless, the Night Fury from How to Train Your Dragon. In the 2025 live-action remake, this legendary dragon undergoes a transformation both physical and emotional, evolving from a charming animated companion into a lifelike being whose every blink, breath, and movement radiates soul. Toothless's presence in this adaptation transcends special effects. He feels alive. His story is no longer just about friendship, it's about evolution, legacy, and the bond that defines an era of fantasy storytelling. The filmmakers approached Toothless's redesign with both reverence and ambition. Director Dean DeBlois and the VFX teams at Weta FX and Industrial Light Magic faced one of the most difficult challenges in modern visual storytelling, bringing a beloved animated icon into the real world without losing his personality. Toothless had to feel authentic enough to belong in a live-action environment yet retain the charm and expressiveness that made him universally adored. The team referred to their approach as soul-first design, ensuring that every frame reflected emotion before perfection. Designing the new Night Fury in the animated films, Toothless's design struck a balance between cat, dog, and dragon, a blend of familiarity and fantasy. For the live-action version, artists studied real animal behavior, drawing inspiration from black panthers, eagles, dolphins, and even horses to replicate emotional depth. They used a custom motion rig that allowed animators to blend reptilian precision with mammalian warmth. The skin texture was created using photorealistic scales that shimmer under light, revealing subtle blues and purples when the sun hits, making him seem both mysterious and majestic. The filmmakers wanted Toothless to evoke awe, but also empathy. His large, intelligent eyes, now rendered with over 10 million polygons each, convey the full range of emotion. Subtle muscle twitches around the eyes and nostrils give him a language of his own, allowing viewers to understand his thoughts without words. Every detail, from the way his ears move to how his tail flicks during flight, is grounded in emotional storytelling. The sound design for Toothless also underwent an evolution. Original recordings from the animated trilogy were used as references, but new layers were added using real animal sounds: purring tigers, chirping birds, and breathing whales. This combination created a more complex organic sound palette that matches the live-action realism. The result is a creature whose voice is as emotional as it is powerful. Toothless and Hiccup, a bond reforged. The heart of How to Train Your Dragon, 2025, remains the bond between Hiccup and Toothless. But this time, it feels more mature, grounded, and deeply human. The film explores how their relationship has changed since they first met, how trust evolves, how love matures, and how separation can sometimes strengthen connection. One of the film's most emotional scenes takes place early on when Hiccup removes Toothless's damaged tail fin to replace it with a new prosthetic. The moment mirrors their first flight in the original film but carries heavier emotional weight. In live action, you can see Hiccup's trembling hands, Toothless's cautious eyes, and the hesitation between them, a wordless exchange of trust. This realism turns an iconic moment into something deeply intimate. The movie also explores how Toothless grows beyond his bond with Hiccup. Now the alpha of the dragons, he carries a new sense of responsibility.